All right, guys, good evening. I am not flying solo tonight. I am bringing you Mr. Karl Ebel, one of my favorite co-hosts. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Pleasure to be here, Chris.
You know, we probably would not be here on whole if it was not for Mr. Karl and his wife. But I was just thinking back, it was a really funny story. It was actually your son, Christian. He came to the door with your wife when we had just first moved here, and he brought us like this big welcome basket. We were 15 miles away, but that was just kind of the community that welcomed us when we were here. So it's a really neat story and a really neat start. All right, we're going to get going tonight, but tonight we're going to be talking with Mr. Karl, who's been running a regenerative ranching operation for about 20. Are we right at 20, or am I undercutting you even there?
A little bit more than
20. Okay, a little bit more than 20. So tonight we have a jam-packed night. We're going to be talking the cattle industry, the cattle market. We're going to be talking starting a herd. We're going to be talking input costs. We're going to be talking meat goats, beef cattle. Thank you guys so much for being here. Mr. Karl, would you go ahead and just introduce where you're at and what you're farming, just simply?
Well, I've been a friend of Miss Grace for probably 6 or 7 years. We're just down the road, probably 10 miles or so. We bought a pretty rough piece of property about 2001, and we started a renovation of that about 2003, and it's been a great journey, very satisfying. What the before and after pictures look like are quite amazing. In this area, we get very high rainfall. The brush encroachment thing is a huge thing if you're not watching that. And so that was a big part of what we did, push the brush back. Early days, we used some goats, and we moved more from the goats towards the cattle as we restored more grassland.
Mm-hmm. Now, what's the land base? What's the size of the land base that you're working on right now?
Our place is a little over 1,000 acres. So it's a full-time job for one guy that's willing to roll up his sleeve, but very satisfying.
If you're a beginner shepherd on 30 acres or less, then I wrote a book for you. The Basics of Raising Sheep on Pasture. Available at shepherdess.com with free shipping. Raising sheep on pasture requires a basic understanding of pasture management, breeding and lambing, and mitigation methods for common disease. I walk the beginner shepherd through each aspect, sharing through this book vivid pictures, easy to follow instructions, and personalized stories from my own journey with sheep. Available with free shipping at shepherdess.com. You'll find a direct link in the description.
I have an entire list of questions for Mr. Karl surrounding the record high cattle market that we're seeing today, and some questions surrounding his operation. I just want to let you guys know that this is kind of just my excuse to get him in for about 2 hours of conversation once every 3 years. So I'm going to be prioritizing my questions, and we're going to be taking questions from you guys as well. In terms of the goats, now you run the meat goats. What is the breed or the breed cross that you've found the most success with?
If we have a kind of a mixed breed with a very probably Boer. If you look at the herd, that you say it's more dominantly Boer, but there's some Spanish in there and some other stuff that basically, if the mama goat is a good quality goat with no real problems, feet, udder, and we put a good solid Boer Billy across the mamas, we get some really nice kids.
Mm-hmm. Because you're pushing for that carcass for the commodity market.
That meaty.
Yeah.
Beef, that real heavy carcass. You're right.
So, okay, I'm going to jump right in here with my questions, but I really want to attack sort of the cattle market that we're seeing here. I think that February 2023 was the last time that I had you on the live stream. And at that time, I think prices on feeder calves were hovering. Where were we at?
Yeah, so I look back a little bit in my records. That was good that you asked me some of that, Grace. I look back in my records, and so here's the striking thing. In 2020, the fall of 2020, we were getting $1.58 for that 500-pound calf. Then jump ahead to 2023, and we're getting $2.15.
Oh, gotcha. So I was a little bit lowballing in on that.
Well, you probably had a 600-pound calf which was $1.89, but it's about, for that 500-pound calf is what my target is. Yeah, $2.15. And we thought, man, we're doing good.
Right.
We finally have a little breathing room here. And of course, today it's just phenomenal.
Where are we at today?
In 2025, we're at about, for that same 500-pound calf, high quality, good genetics, over $5,
Wow.
$5.40. So you're going from, in 2020, that same calf was about $750, and now you're looking at a calf that's $2,700.
Wow. Did you ever think that it would get to this place? I mean, what are people's thoughts within the industry in terms of the cattle market?
No, I never imagined it would. I mean, I was thinking, well, we might get up towards $3, and that would be nice, and then we'd have some breathing room, but not $5 and something.
Yeah.
But it's just supply and demand.
Right.
It's the nature of what we do, and the weather, environmental, climate, whatever conditions that are pushing us towards. I think if we had a bunch of rain, a lot of the guys would be saying, okay, I've got these heifers that are really good and they're bringing good money, but now I've got the extra grass. I'm going to keep a few. And the drought is still crowding for them.
So people aren't expanding their herds right now.
It has not started yet.
That's interesting.
And there are some great, some guys that do a super job on summarizing the cattle market, what's going on, what kind of where we're headed. There's a guy at OSU that I really like, Dr. Daryl Peel.
Okay, that's a good name.
There's some other ones too. There's one at A&M and at K-State. And I was fortunate to see all three of them together at one time. But anyway, they give some great reports. Those guys are super at what they do. So I just kind of borrow and watch what they do and then witness it kind of, and apply that to what I do.
So you're talking in terms of management, pasture management, or are you talking in terms of predictions for the cattle industry with respect to those names you just dropped?
It's just a big picture of where is this going, and where do I fit with my skill set and the resources that I have on my place. So as this thing evolves, and it's going to change, what can I do to be in the right spot?
Yes, exactly.
And we do a limited amount of grass finishing. We sell finished beef, but when a calf brings $2,700 at 500 pounds, you can quickly do the math, and probably some of y'all that are watching know this. I mean, you got to get $5,000 for a finished beef to make it halfway exciting.
Yeah, right.
Because you've taken him from 500 pounds to 1,200 pounds. Now the resources that you've got to put into that animal are way more than it took you to get from 0 to 500.
Yeah. And that's the funny thing, because when we met 6 years ago, people were getting excited about finishing out a portion of their herd and direct marketing the grass-fed beef. And we've totally flipped. You can't hardly convince people that the margins are there, because if you're smart, you're doing math and they're not. We're just in a record high cattle market. And we're going to be touching on, I've got tons more questions about the market, but Mr. Karl works in a regenerative pasture-based system for his cattle. And one of the interesting things that you really emphasized or made me understand up front was that you got into raising livestock, seeing the animals as a means of managing the land rather than vice versa.
That's right, Grace. That's very important. I mean, I did, when I was in my younger years, did the cowboy thing, and I loved it. As I was more involved in what really the whole grazing ecology was about, it began to really fascinate me, and I began to understand more about what was at the base of all this that I was enjoying. It's a grazing land ecology. That is the resource, and that's what we have to nurture and take care of and grow. That's the soil that's under that, and the grazing ecology. That's where we're going to get the return in the long term. And that's not an easy thing for a lot of Americans. We want to put the effort in, and we want to see the progress right now. But it's a little bit of a slow process to rebuild and start building up the soil health, all the different grasses, all the different forages that we need to do to establish, and then go into something where we really have a great resource.
Yeah.
So that takes time.
Yep. All right, we're going to get into some questions again connected to the cattle industry. Some people here in the comment section are asking for guidance in terms of getting in. Those are all questions I have on my list tonight, and we're really going to get to them. But Mr. Karl, for people who are just totally new to you, give us some context on your land base. When you purchased it, what was the history of the land? What it had been previously used for? Kind of carrying capacity improvements over time, little things like that that'll help people to get a picture of where you're at.
So it was in this area, it was almost 100% row crops and mostly cotton. Cotton is very hard on the soil. Yeah. And so they farmed it and they farmed it and they farmed it. They farmed it for well over 100 years. So there wasn't a whole lot of nutrients going back. So the soil was quite exhausted. Yeah. And when we first got our place, there were jackrabbits. If you know what a jackrabbit likes, he likes a lot of bare ground so he can really book it when the cow is coming. So it was a lot of bare ground. And so that tells you what the state of the soil health was. It was not real great. But slowly but surely, with rotational grazing, as there's a lot of regenerative stuff that you can do. But for me, that is the cornerstone of what builds what I'm doing with grazing land ecology.
That's really good. All right, so let's go ahead and go back to the list of questions that I have here. Now, you decided last time you were on the show was 2023. You were at $2.15 per pound for one of the 500-pound steers that you were taking to market. Today, we're over $5.40, right?
That's right.
Now, it sort of feels like, as an onlooker somewhat, we've had somewhat of a perfect storm. We've had inflation, drought. We're at record lows in terms of cattle inventory in the USA. Tariffs, bans for screwworms. Is there any one factor that you would say is contributing more than another?
Yes. So, really, if the drought was not just there keeping us on our toes, there would be more producers committing to that rebuild. We went through a little bit similar to this in 2014, and the rebuild was pretty quick.
Right.
But we had rain, and we had a lot of people that were willing to go ahead and say, okay, let's go. But now that the drought is hanging around, then that's going to be one more thing. Anytime you add with any investment, anytime you add uncertainty.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of this investment is going to be on borrowed money. So then the risk is a little bit higher when they're not real certain what's going on. Then they're going to just kind of hold back a little bit. And I think that's probably what's going on now.
So you would attribute a lot of it to just where we're at climate-wise. The drought is just causing people to be, they're selling their heifers instead of keeping them back.
If they had extra grass, they would be kind of looking at it the other way. I'm going to keep them. I want to utilize this resource. But if they're like, man, if it gets dry, then I got to get hay and I got to do all this other stuff, then it's not going to come out very good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because when you're feeding your cows out of a brown paper bag, the profits kind of go out the window. So I mentioned some things. Am I overlooking factors? You mentioned the climate, and some of the factors I mentioned. We got low inventories, tariffs, drought, import bans. Is there anything I'm overlooking in terms of what could be driving the market up? Not
really. I think a little bit on the tariff thing, it was just a little bit of uncertainty. Really, after we've come through a lot of reiterations of kind of how that was going to be, the beef guys kind of benefited. Because the grain guys, the row crop guys, they had counter tariffs or whatever you want to call it. And so grain prices are down, and because the global demand was sort of cut off with the retaliatory stuff. That's gotcha. Right. Yeah. That's right. So the grain, they're the ones that are going to be having a hard go here for a little while.
Interesting. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and throw up a graph here because I'm hitting the cattle market questions pretty hard, just as a matter of personal curiosity. So this is what we were looking at, cattle market graph from, I guess, one's 2013 to 2022. I'll pull one up that's a little bit more recent here. Now, from 2013 to 2015, the cattle market was on a pretty steep ascent, I guess you could say. And then in 2016, it hit a really big crash. You were in the market. You were in the business at that point in time. What's a little bit of context for what we're seeing basically on screen here in 2013 to 2015 and 16?
Well, it's back to supply and demand. And so when the numbers started building after the high prices in 14 and everybody saw, hey, there's a little bit of change to be made here, I'm getting back in. And they did, and they started building the numbers again. Well, then the favor shifts to the packers and the people that are selling the meat.
Right.
And so they have the leverage, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's what you saw when the market kind of hit the bottom in 16.
Now, explain that for somebody who doesn't understand the industry or the monopoly. How would something like a packer have the ability to influence such a downturn as we see here?
If they have really more beef than they need, they can pause.
Yeah.
But the people that are raising those cattle and finishing those cattle in the feedlot cannot pause. They can pause a little and grow those steers a little bigger in the feedlot, but they can't pause a lot.
Yeah.
And the packers can kind of use that to their benefit.
So basically, I mean, they have things like cold storage and inventories, on the backside. So they're able to basically leverage that ability to, I guess,
to slow it all down. And then the guys that need to be making money on the production end. So you're saying that in 2015 to 2016, we saw this horrible crash. You're saying that the packers were able to leverage inventories to stay in the market, purposely or not. I don't, you can't say purposely, but they just make a profit.
Yeah.
That's what they're in for.
Right. Interesting. So is there any parallel? I mean, we're here 10 years later. Will history repeat itself? Are we at that risk? What would contribute or prevent it?
I would say that's a very good question. And the same guys that were predicting the markets, they were predicting the rebuild. When 14 kind of came to the high and they said, okay, they're starting to rebuild. They were right.
Yeah.
They were not every little, peak and valley, but for the most part, they predicted it pretty close. And those same guys now are saying the rebuild hasn't started yet.
So what metrics were they watching? Just herd sizes?
Herd sizes. They get numbers from the entire sales sheet, basically, of beef in the United States.
Interesting. So they're sitting there, the ones that predicted the crash that we saw in 15 and 16 really well. They're saying we don't have the climate right now to recreate this in 26, 27.
It's not happening right now. And it doesn't look like it because, it's not like raising something that has a quick production time. Yeah. Because cattle, that's not the case. So it's going to take a couple of years before we see, wow, it's really started back the other way again. And they're not seeing that right now.
So in that context of that, another question that I had was imports. Are we going to see, so I guess for some context here, I'll build up with a couple more questions. Did Trump ever put import tariffs on cattle specifically? I couldn't really find any information that confirmed.
Not really. There were a couple in the early days that were basically under tariffs for imports. Then there were some reviews done and they removed them from the beef part of the imports to try to keep a stable food, try to help with inflation, with food inflation and so forth.
So this is what we're looking at here. This is a graph that I found from 2017, basically to present day. They're citing a 368 average for feeder cattle, but there were no import tariffs on cattle specifically. But in November of 2025, so just last year, Trump dropped tariffs on things like beef, coffee, and another kind of exotic product. Was there any conversation in the community about that? Did it make a big impact?
I don't see that any of those particular measures made, say a big impact. What it did was the uncertainty.
Yeah, gotcha.
Of a guy it doesn't take you long to do the math, and there is a big portion of this beef cattle sector. These guys they call it running yearlings, running stockers. Mm-hmm. One stalker, $2,700, and they need 200.
Yeah.
Now do the math on that and figure out they're going to be borrowing quite a bit of money.
Mm-hmm.
So uncertainty and I would be too. I don't know how they sleep at night.
Yeah.
Makes people really nervous, and they're like, "Oh, pump the brakes here."
So those people that have to make the big investments financially, they would be probably the feeder or the stalker guys. Which ones? Which category?
The cow-calf guys, mostly like myself. We do a few. We hold our own yearling, but we don't buy any.
Yeah.
But the cow-calf guys, if he's watching his numbers and his budget, his inputs, his input costs increased a little, but not tremendously. But the guys that are in the next section, where you take this 500-pound calf and you bring him to a wheat pasture or someplace to graze him through the summer, a lot of those guys buy those calves.
Yeah, yeah.
So you can see the difference.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because they're not raising a herd. Their inventories are just constantly revolving door.
And I would say, I'm just throwing a number out there, 60% of those guys are going to talk to a banker.
Yeah, right. So they're leveraged out the wazoo. So that's a really good insight. So you came over in 2020, I think it was, and we had our first conversation on cattle. One of the first things you talked about was the imports from Argentina, just importing the full carcasses and cutting them in the United States and then marking them product of USA. Do we still have that going on now, or was that repealed?
That is a good question. That was referred to back in those days as the cool legislation, or whatever bill or whatever they passed. And I know there was some more talk on revising that to protect some of our U.S. products that are made here, that are raised here, And so I think, I'm not sure, to be honest, Grace, but I think maybe they have done a little bit to fix that.
Right.
So that the stuff that comes in from other countries, some of it is necessary because we need
deficits.
We have too much fat. I say too much. We have a lot of fat in our beef that we don't want to just discard. So they bring in a lot. Brazil, Argentina, they would bring in a lot of lean beef, and then we would blend those, and then we would have something that would be a very good, very usable product.
That brings me to, I think, what happened just maybe a week or two ago when Trump allowed for, I think it was like $800 million in trim from Argentina to be imported tariff-free. A lot of people were throwing that around in a context that maybe wasn't entirely accurate, to be a little bit sensational. Did that at all cool the market? Do those kinds of things put the market at risk?
I don't think it had any measurable impact in it when you look at, and that's what these experts they go by the numbers. They're like, this is what we have for the amount of beef we're processing. This is what these, potential imports could represent, bringing something else in. It's not going to be a huge impact on it. So, I would say the thing with Mexico probably has a little bit more impact.
Okay.
And it's all based around this screw worm, this new world screw worm. So that's yet to be seen as we approach summer. What happened with that?
Okay, that's really good information. So you're referencing those people in the industry that you follow for market information. Could you drop their names again in case anybody wants to go start following?
Daryl Peel.
Okay.
And he does some good audio. So it's very good video broadcast. And he's just a great guy.
Okay. Daryl Peel. Okay, great. So I think that gives some really good context. Well, one other question I had, and it's just a straightforward question. Are we at risk and nobody can really answer this because they're not really in the minds of these people, but are we at risk of basically enough imports being let in to produce a more favorable price for the consumer? And if that was something that was done, how would it impact the cattle market? Is that a question that can even be answered right now?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, there are some countries that may have enough volume to affect that. Obviously, their exports are going somewhere now, and somebody else is asking for those exports. So they already have a market for them. Whether ours would be favorable enough to say, oh, we're going to stop sending it over here, we're going to send it to the U.S., I'm just not sure. I kind of don't think it would switch that big.
Yeah. Or maybe not that fast at least. Yeah, that's a good point. All right, guys, we are here with Mr. Karl Ebel halfway through our hour. He is regenerative ranching beef cattle as well as meat goats. We're going to start taking questions from the audience, but I'm just working through my list here because we're at a really interesting and exciting time in the cattle industry for a lot of people. But we're just painting a picture in terms of the context that is surrounding it. I know that a lot of you have listened to me and really us in a lot of ways talk about value adding to your operation through just adding that finished beef or that grass finished direct to consumer. But we're at a unique time where that's just not playing out to be as profitable. A lot of people are just shifting their focus to the commodity market to capitalize on this time period. So in that context, you got a lot of people that are excited about getting into the cattle industry. It's good because we need that. But in that spirit, what kind of information, words of caution would you give or encouragement for that first timer jumping into cattle in 2026? What would you look them in the face and tell them?
I would say, when you start, get some quality cattle that are going to finish at not a very high quality finish. And that's going to be your product. And those guys that buy your calves, if you're a cow-calf guy and you're selling calves, those buyers can spot those good quality cattle in a second. If you bring them to whatever, and I would say precondition those cattle and background those cattle so that you get a premium price for them. Mm-hmm. It just depends on what your circumstances are. But if you're just taking them straight off of the mama cow and they're balling and you take them to the sale like that, they're going to hit you with a big discount because those calves now are high risk. Mm-hmm. And nobody, at the prices we have today, nobody can stand a death loss of much at all. So they want good, solid cattle that have been weaned 45 days, 60 days, and have had proper vaccinations to make sure they're not going to get sick.
That's really good. And I'm going to ask for definition of terms here on a few things in case we have newbies. You talk preconditioning your cattle. Break that down. What does that process look like on your ranch?
Very good question. It's actually the biggest part of preconditioning is planning. Because when that calf is about 6 or 7 months old, you're going to have to wean him. Mm-hmm. When you do that, he's under a lot of stress. I can't get to mama. That's what I've known for all of my life. So fence line, wean those calves, if at all possible. Mom's on the other side of the fence. They can almost touch her. They can talk to her. They can see her. And then where those calves are standing, when you wean them, you need to have some good forage. That requires a little planning. So in the fall, you might say, okay, I'm going to wean my calves. I'm just picking a number. October 1st. So now when you're at mid-August or even before that, you're saying, okay, I know I'm going to wean those calves in this paddock. I'm saving some forage in that paddock. So when those calves are balling and looking for their moms, all they have to do is lower their nose and they've got something good to eat. If they got a full belly, man, oh man, they just so much better and they don't get sick.
Yeah. They forget their moms a little bit faster.
Yeah. But it takes a little planning.
Yeah. So basically, your pasture management plays into every phase of the life cycle of that cow and really of that calf all the way up to weaning.
It does, Grace. I mean, some simple we talk about rotational grazing, some simple polywire sets to carve off a piece where those calves are going to go down to that fence line to meet their moms who are in the next pasture over. Take your polywire and just leave that out of your grazing. Don't let any cattle in there. Yeah. And then when you get ready to turn those calves in there, man, you're really way ahead of the game.
All right. The question kind of answered it already, but it comes through a lot to me for sheep. And question is investing in quality cattle early on important, or can I just make corrections down the road, start with low quality, build quality later?
I would start with, I did the same thing. I wouldn't say low quality, but I got some cattle that 5 years later, after I was better informed, I would have made different choices. I would have picked some higher quality cattle, stuff that, everybody has an idea of the best quality, but I'm an English is Angus and Hereford. I lean more to the Angus, but they do a great job finishing. Those guys that are bidding on them, wherever you're selling them, they can see them. They know they're going to perform at the next stage when they're grazing yearlings, and when they go to the feed yard, they're going to perform in the feed yard.
Yeah.
And so they pay you a premium.
Right. So that brings me to another question. Again, sort of answered it, but what does a beginner look for when he's shopping for cattle? What kind of questions does he ask? What does he look for in the operation? How can he make those wise decisions as a beginner and up front?
There's some, the guys that are doing it, grazing. Yeah. So there's a certain cattle type that is a little bit more efficient. Now, we're not going to say we're going to redesign the cow here. They're just a little more efficient. They're going to give you a calf every year. So you want to ask whatever, if you're just looking at a set of heifers or 5 heifers or whatever, I want to see the mama cows because I want to see their udders, and I want to see what these heifers are going to look like when they grow into cows for me. So I ask to see what the moms look like. Yeah, pay close attention to the udders.
So the udders.
And ask that guy who's raising them what percentage calf crop does he wean.
That's good.
Yeah, you need to be in the high 80s, around 90%. If he's doing his business right, those cattle are doing good, they're efficient, and they're doing a good job for him, he ought to be able to tell you, 87, 89, 90, whatever, somewhere around there. And then
right,
these gals, if you take care of these gals properly, they can bring you a good calf, a good wean calf crop.
So you want to look for good udders, you want to look for a good calf crop, and then would you ask about feed inputs at all, or what would you do there?
You can. That's very helpful, Grace, because there are some cattle that have been selected for that want to really lean into the grain finished ration. That is not exactly what I look for. I look for something that's going to do really well grazing. And to be honest, I finished several steers and they finished very well. But the ones they're going to have, the cattle that I'm looking for are going to have a little bigger girth because they're going to be able to consume a little more forage. They're not going to be real tall legs. They're going to be a little bit shorter, moderate frame. My cows are probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,150
That's good.
to 1,200 pounds, the bigger ones. And so they're moderate. I mean, some of these, when everybody was just pushing for bigger, people would probably call my cows small, but they're more of a moderate size. They tend to be more efficient. Almost all of the research that's been done about, so you take a cow and what percentage of her body weight did she wean? Okay, that's the calf. What percentage did she wean? So if she weighs 1,700 pounds and she weaned the calf that was 600 pounds, and my little cows that are 1,150 are weaning a 500-pound calf, you start working the math a little bit there.
Because the math involves the feed that they're consuming.
Picture this. You are looking out over your 5 10, maybe 20 plus acres. The sun is setting and your flock is grazing across a green pasture. Something inside you affirms, this is real wealth, at least when it comes to material things. You know how to take care of your sheep, your grazing system is improving your land, and you have a way to direct market each lamb that is born. This is how I feel when I look at my flock, and I want the same for you. So I put together a free 1-hour class that answers some of your most frequently asked questions concerning how I raise, rotational graze, and market my sheep for $480 per head. Go to shepherdess.com/480 or simply click the first link in the show notes of this podcast to sign up and receive the free on-demand class. What's more is that I will follow up over the course of 3 days, providing you with even more free resources, including a free ebook, a free grazing sheep kickstart guide, and a free marketing sheep kickstart guide. This information is worth paying for, but I'm giving it to you for free. Just go to shepherdess.com/480, shepherdess.com/480, or simply click the first link in the show notes of this podcast for how I raise, graze, and market my sheep for $480 each.
The math involves the feed that they're consuming. You know, what's the cow's percent? We're going to get to that one, the inputs, but what percentage of body weight do they typically consume? Is that,
I don't have
calculable?
that. I should have that percentage on my brain. I just work in terms of what I know I've fed in a situation where it was snow and ice.
Right.
Know how many pounds of good hay that I fed to those cows. Yeah, they need about a good, say 1,200 pound cow. And if she doesn't have anything to pick on or nothing, just the hay you're bringing her, you're probably looking at about 30 pounds a day.
Yeah,
somewhere in that neighborhood.
Okay, that's good. All right, so just as a recap, in terms of the cattle that you choose, you're looking for an English breed, something in the Angus. I think I've seen Hereford as well. That would fall in the same category. Mm-hmm. A low line, which means you don't want a lot of legs, essentially.
Right.
Yeah. And then you want like a big gut, a big vat.
Girth.
Right.
Girth. They say spring of ribs.
Yeah.
So the ribs kind of come out, mm-hmm. and you can imagine, that's the processing component inside those ribs. Mm-hmm. Great. Now I've got this big processing component. So.
And then 1,150 to 1,200 pounds is kind of where your sweet spot is.
You could go a little above that, but I wouldn't go much.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And then you want to, when you're shopping for cattle, you want to ask if you're looking at those young heifers, you want to see their moms.
You want to see their moms.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then you want to check the udders. What are you looking for in a good udder?
You're looking for a moderate size, nothing that's pendulous, swinging. Those tend to have more problems.
Okay.
Something that's well attached,
mm-hmm.
with teats, not much bigger than your thumb,
mm-hmm.
And something that's going to be just well attached and not.
Yeah.
There's some more technical. You can go online and get more technical terms. I just can't remember them at this moment.
But I think
it has to do with how it's attached.
Yeah. So basically compact, nothing that's swinging around or hanging down like a dairy cow, essentially.
So what you do is some people will say, yeah, but she doesn't have much milk. Mm-hmm. Okay. But let's talk about the genetics of what you're raising. So mm-hmm. you're raising a cow, a breed, a type of cattle mm-hmm. that do well on grass, mm-hmm. and they breed early. Mm-hmm. So now they're going to have their calves on time in March.
Yeah.
What comes in March is superb.
Best grass.
That's right. Yeah. The best grass grade. So now, okay, maybe she's not this huge milk producer. Mm-hmm. Not a problem. Junior is going to transfer to the grass a lot quicker and use that efficiently.
Yes.
And so she doesn't need to have the extra milk. And therefore, the resources in her body can go to reproduction. Mm-hmm. So she'll cycle that much quicker. Mm-hmm. And the next time, next year's calf crop will be early too.
And that's just the tandem bike, essentially, of genetics and pasture management, essentially there. Because you can't have one without the other. I mean, that cow that we're talking about that's working really well in your grass-based system, may or may not. Well, yours perform pretty well no matter where they're at, to be honest. Yeah. But if you were to bring something that was really grain dependent into your system, again, you'd probably have the difficulty there.
You may have lower fertility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Because you were talking, I was about to say, your cattle may not do as well on the grain feedlots, but you were just talking about how the buyers search your cattle out at the market because they know if they perform well on a pasture-based system, I mean, they're gonna.
They're great. I sold private treaty to a guy that was feeding them in a feedlot. Yeah. It was a mixture of grain and silage, and he said the calves I brought him did top of the line.
Outperformed. That's really amazing. Well. That's neat. All right, so let's go ahead and get into this is a question. It's for somebody who's looking to get into the cattle industry right now. Would you recommend that a new cowboy, start his herd right now, or should he wait for prices to cool? What's your opinion on that?
I think that is a very good question, and I see where the guys are deliberating over some of that. And I think you're probably going to have 2 or 3 more years. For the next 2 are probably going to be really good, and there's probably going to be a third one that's going to be good. Mm-hmm. So if you bought some heifers now, and say, to put the bull on this, like May, June or whatever, you're probably going to be getting back most of that money.
So you could bank on, say I went out and invested in a herd of cows, bred them. I could probably expect to have one good calf crop sale before the market starts to descend on that. I mean, just generally, if you were to give your best guess.
Yeah. That would be my guess based on, what these experts feel and them are saying.
Right. Because and something that it's very elementary, but the life cycle of a beef cattle is just a little bit longer than something like a sheep or a goat. So you have to factor that in with the markets and all. It would have been better off to buy a herd 5 or 6 years ago when everybody was
even 2 years ago,
liquidating. But all right. So the question that I have, and we're going to go ahead and segue into the input costs, because your system is really something I want people to learn from as much as possible. Go ahead and talk about stocking rate on your land, how you manage that, and how you would encourage people not just to load it up.
Very good. So it all starts before you go into the cattle. It all starts with trying to do a fairly accurate assessment of what you have for a grazing resource. The cattle, if you start stocking your whatever pasture you have in a conservative manner, and you watch what's going on, how the grass responds to the cattle, how the cattle respond to the forage that they're ingesting. So you're learning all the time. And then after the first year, you're going, hey, I could have had 5 more cattle, or I could have had whatever. Then you add, but don't ever get ahead of your grazing resource, because then the cattle, you've got them to take care of. You're going to buy hay, and they may overgraze, and they may actually set your grazing resource back. Right. So start conservatively. You can always add.
Right. Yes.
You can always add when you say, well, man, I had grass left over. And of course, weather cycles are going to be throwing you a curve all the time too. You might have had a real extra wet summer one year, and the next time, got droughty on you. So, but if you have extra forage standing in the pasture, that's insurance. Yeah. If a drought comes, if something, out of the ordinary happens, you got something to fall back on. Right. Even if it's not great quality forage, you can supplement with some protein, and you can make it through the storm and keep those cattle in good shape.
Now, in your operation, let's just say it's an average year, nothing too good, nothing too bad. Yeah. What do you budget in terms of carrying capacity, cows to acres?
I have about 5 acres to the cow. I've got probably 750 of open acres. And I've got what's called savanna. Savanna's got some trees with grass underneath. And then I've got wooded areas that the cow really isn't going to make much of a living there. So, but if you look at how many mama cows I have, how many yearlings I generally carry, and how many goats.
Right.
The goats are kind of off by themselves because they mostly eat the brush and stuff. But I do about 5 acres to the cow. And in where we live, there are people that stock much heavier.
Yeah.
But all those people that in this area are feeding a lot of hay. And so that's what I've eliminated. And that's what's been really profitable for me. When I'm looking at my winter plan, I'm considering how much stockpile, so to speak, of what I have standing forage. And I have a lot of native forages, which stockpile some of the introduced species. And so going into the winter, I'm like, I got plenty of standing forage, stockpile forage. Now, as you get into late January and February, the quality of that forage continues to go down. The weather's been working on it all winter. So you got to keep some protein going to those cattle so they can do what they need to do. I've got to do my job.
Right.
If I'm saying, my cows have got to have a calf every year on time, I got to do my job too.
Right. And that's what you answered the question that came next in terms of hay inputs. You don't, in an average year, don't have any, if to speak of, at least.
No, I keep about 40 round bales under a covered storage. We have ice storms that here. We had one this year that lasted about 5 days. There was not a bite of anything for a cow except what you brought them.
Yeah.
So those hay bales, I used about half. I used about 20 bales to feed my whole bunch. And then it all melted and we're back grazing again.
So that 5 acres to a cow is factoring year-round feeding. You're not bringing in a lot of feed inputs. Maybe tell about the protein cubes that you'll feed and how you feed them in tandem with that stockpile.
I use a high protein. They're 38% protein, and the main component is cottonseed meal. You have to be a little careful. You don't want to overfeed that type of feed, but it's very efficient. If you're feeding, just to give you an example, if you're feeding a 20% cube, range cube, you're going to handle twice as many cubes as I'm handling. That means hauling, distributing, whatever you're doing, you're handling twice as many. And so if you look at it on a cost basis, those 38% cubes are roughly 50% cheaper than the 20% grain-based cubes. So both in cost, in labor, the amount that you have to handle, it just works out. It works out really well. And you can feed those cubes. If it's a commodity feed that's loose and it gets real muddy, you're going to have troughs. Now, try messing with troughs for 100-something cows. That's a nightmare. These cubes, I can find a place on an old terrace next to a road or something that's got some good turf, and I can feed those cubes in.
And that 38% cube is working in tandem with the lower quality forage, but it provides, you explained it sort of simplistically to me, it provides just enough protein for the gut to do its thing with the rest of the dry matter.
It does. They have to have the forage in some form or fashion for their rumen to perform properly. But as long as they have some forage, even if it's poor quality, you can kind of adjust the nutritive value of what their total intake is by adding those high protein cubes.
Now, at what rate do you feed those?
I usually feed through the whole winter. I'll feed them I don't feed them sometimes I feed them every day. Sometimes I feed them every other day. Sometimes I feed them every third day. But if you took an average through from about the 1st of October to about the middle of March, I feed about 2.8, 2.9 pounds of those 38s per head per day.
Okay. So that would be, as you mentioned, 30 pounds. When you feed just hay, they'll eat about 30 pounds of hay per head. So that would be about 10% of total daily intake would be this high input or high protein. Okay, that's really good. The question also that I'm coming up on here is, within your operation, what's the cost of raising a cow in 1 year here in 2026?
Very good. Very good. So it's gradually come up over the last, as everything else has as well with inflation. But right now, for the national average, it's over $1,000 a cow
For 1 year.
for 1 year. So I've got, let's just pick a number. I've got 10 mama cows, and I'm going to feed them and take them. I'm going to let them graze as much as I can, and I'm going to have other inputs, whether it's machinery, whether it's whatever it is, property taxes, all the stuff that you have to pay to make your place run. And then you divide that operating cost by 10 cows or 100 cows or whatever you have, and you get this number. And the national average is about $1,050
So you really have
to keep a cow for a year.
So that I'm rewinding in my mind to those times when people were just getting $750 to $800.
Very good, Grace. Very good. That's what everybody needs to be.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll go back down there again, but it's not going to be where it is now.
Right.
And so you need to be thinking about, even though like now nobody can mess up very bad, a cow-calf guy can't, because the calf prices are just phenomenal. But it's not going to stay like that.
And when you're talking $1,000 a year national average, those are your guys who have their systems down. When you're just starting, you're spending a good bit of extra money as you get your feet under you and get your systems in place. So as a beginner, your per cow cost might be a little bit higher over the course of the year.
It, right. It is when you first start to put the infrastructure in, whether you've got to develop water and whether you got, your fences. Now these poly fences are very cost effective. Yeah. You use the same thing. And so you can really cut costs and open up your options for grazing a lot more. It's a little more work. Yeah. You got to get out there and do the post and, string the poly out and make sure, check it every day, make sure it's good and hot. But it gives you a lot more options, and it gives you a lot cheaper cost on the fence.
Yeah. And I think, you said it takes a little extra work, but sometimes I look at the work it takes to, haul the hay out there over winter, or, treat health problems that manifest as a result of not keeping your animals moving. I would maybe argue if somebody was to put that up and say, it takes me too long to rotate my animals. What are you doing? But you're not.
Right. I would agree with you, Grace. And so the bonus with the rotation or with, moving these animals is you're going to get a little more grass production.
Yeah.
If somebody said, hey, I'll sell you 100 acres, for this price. And somebody said, I'll sell you 100 acres and I'll throw in another 25 acres, same price. Yep. They wouldn't pause. They wouldn't hesitate. They know what they would take. So if you're rotating grazing and you can increase your grass production, your forage production by just 25%. Right. That's meaningful.
That pays for itself. It pays for your time.
Well, and
if you want to,
you will see in the literature, you will see on the internet, things like people claiming like double your stocking rate, but caution. Yeah, try it conservative, learn how it works, and then you'll see where you can increase. Maybe this guy that doubled his stocking rate has phenomenal soil health when he starts. Yeah, and maybe I don't. So I'm not going to say, I'm going to double my stocking rate just because I'm rotationally grazing.
Yeah, so that's a very, very good point as well. Be conservative, but get excited at the same time.
You can add to it anytime you want to.
Yes.
When you see you got extra resources.
Yep. Good. All right. So but you touched on $1,000 a year national average. Is that about your average?
No, I'm probably somewhere around 500.
Wow. Okay. That's great. And what is your highest input cost in your operation besides
probably
land?
My feed cost, my supplement cost, Grace, is probably. And you want to put a good quality mineral out there. Minerals getting more and more expensive, but you got I vaccinate all my cattle. I don't. If I treat 1 or 2 calves a year, that's about all I treat. If I have a little run, some of you folks may know what pink eye is. Pink eye is kind of a wild card because there's some vaccines and things that you can do to minimize it, but it can still bite you. If I have a year where I have a little pink eye, I might treat 10 calves. But certainly not the stories that I hear from other guys saying, man, we had a run of respiratory and I lost so many calves and treated so many. And I just don't do that. I give them the vaccine. I get them, do the preconditioning, and I keep them healthy and what they need. And I just don't treat that many cattle at all.
All right, we're going to go ahead. We've got 2 more minutes, but would you mind just doing a couple minutes of overtime? Because we're going to get to a couple of audience questions here. Would that work? All right. So Jim asks, I'm taking over for an elderly man who has let things go, and his layout has several choke points that become deep mud pits every winter. It's causing foot problems and makes for poor soil regeneration. I ordered a regenerative farming book called Solid Bar Beef, but I haven't received it yet. What other books or resources would you recommend to help him improve the management situation here?
The mud, this gentleman has a very good point that is often overlooked. And I call it mud management. And we're in 40-something inches of rain here. So, man, I know where you're coming from. It can be a challenge. It may be that you have certain areas of your operation that don't get so muddy, have fairly good drainage. Or it may be if you see a rain forecast, depending on what your logistics are, sometimes you can't move them. But I know on my place, when I've had to leave them in a place that was too muddy, when it's going to be muddy, try not to confine them. Try to let them spread out, and they'll do a lot less damage in general. But those choke points, I know what you mean. Moving them back and forth through there, chop it all up, and maybe you need another gate or two, another route that you can take them if possible. Sometimes the lay of the land doesn't allow that, but yes, that is a real challenge.
So spreading out, maybe creating more choke points so that the
it just depends on the lay of the land, really.
Yeah.
And it does. I mean, some people just, they have sacrifice areas.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, I've got some place that's fairly high and well drained. They're gonna chop it up a little bit with the hoof action, but that's where they have to stay when we have those events.
That's a good point. Any specific resources or books or places that he should go for management?
I don't, other than just that basic premise. If you can spread them out when it's wet, and so they don't just stay confined and chop. They can really tear some pasture up bad.
Yeah, there is a very high density rotational grazing that's promoted, but you really cautioned me. You said when the climate is muddy like this, that high density stuff will push you back in terms of your forage. And explain exactly why. I mean, why do people want to avoid high density when it's super wet like that?
They'll just chop up. Now, where we live, we have Bermuda grass. And so Bermuda grass, as long as it has fairly high fertility, you can really abuse it and just tear it to pieces, and it comes back in the summertime real good. But the native forages don't. If you put those cattle in there and it's wet and they stand there in a concentrated bunch, where you would want the hoof action for part of the year when it's fairly dry. But when it's wet and they chop it all up, they'll damage those, kill those, stomp them in the mud.
Yeah, right.
Plants.
Jared asks, is Red Angus a good breed for a grass-based operation?
Yes, it is.
So Red Angus.
I have some Red Angus.
Yeah. All right. So another question is, anyone have any guidance as to mini cows or Scottish Highlands? That's Hadassah's asking that.
I would. Those are not going to be mainstream cattle. In other words, if you have those two breeds and you bring them and sell them, the calves from those two breeds, they're not going to fit in a big program to move on through the traditional cattle raising system. And so the buyers are going to back off a little bit from those. If you had something similar, if you had a good solid Black Angus with a moderate to small frame, not the really small ones, then you're going to get a premium price. The Highlanders, the Scottish Highlander, the one with the long hair, I think they're a pretty good beef breed. They're horn cattle, so you got to take some, precaution there. and sometimes they don't fit with some of the cattle that don't have horns. So some of the buyers, unless you dehorn them at a young age, some of the buyers are going to back off a little bit there too.
Jim says, does that 5 acres per cow include all of your calf count, or is that just your breeding moms?
No, that's the moms.
Okay.
That's the moms.
And so, but when you budget 5 acres per cow, you need to have a little bit of extra for once those calves are weaned.
Well, you're looking at what they call an animal unit. And
Gotcha.
So that's really about 1,000-pound cow with a calf up to about 400 pounds.
Gotcha.
That's an animal unit. Now, if you had yearling heifers, if they weighed 750 pounds, you see what you would do with that. You would be, I've got 3/4 of an animal unit. And that's how you would, do the calculation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because I have my replacement heifers.
Yeah.
And they just fall into that same calculation.
Okay, that makes a good point. I think this is going to be the last question of the night. Susanna says, sorry for jumping in late. Can anyone give advice on how to get rid of Japanese grass in the grazing fields? It's Kogan grass?
That's one that I'm not familiar with.
I've never heard of that one as well. She lives in Alabama. But what would you say? Any guidance for invasive species on whole and how to manage them?
If you can put grazing pressure on it and try to, with the cattle, a grass, trying to take a grass out when you're trying to raise grass in general, your herbicides are going to be really tough because they're mostly designed to kill grasses or broadleaves. So taking a particular grass out of the other grasses you have is really hard. If you can give it conditions that it doesn't like, if it doesn't like to be grazed close, try to put some pressure on it. Yeah.
So that's a really good point. So get to know that grass and get to know what it doesn't like, and then give it exactly that. All right.
One more point, Grace. As everybody is trying to look at the markets that we have now and trying to figure out where they fit. If this is the time when maybe the direct marketing thing is not so attractive, but you need that skill set.
Right.
Okay. So if you're thinking, well, I kind of want to do the direct marketing, that is good. So learn all about it, because there's a lot of moving pieces to that direct marketing, as this young lady can tell you. So get some real experience. Do 1 or 2, steers or whatever for your family and friends, and figure out, here's my finished product. Am I happy with that? Are my customers happy with that? And how did I get here? I'm going to have to move through these steps. I'm going to have to take it and have it processed. Then I'm going to have to, how am I going to transport it? How am I going to market it, et cetera, et cetera. So do it maybe in a little bit of an abbreviated way. So when the time comes and it is profitable, it won't be long, 4 or 5 years, you think, okay, I have it figured out. Now I'm ready to shift. I'm ready to pivot and get in where I need to.
That's a really good point. So whereas, in 2020, it might have been tempting to establish an operation that was 50-50, 50% commodity, 50% retail. Today, 90-10 might be more appealing financially, but you do need to maintain sort of keep your muscles going.
Paramount.
Yeah. Because when the market does shift, and it will, then you can just scale up a portion of your operation for those different climates market-wise. Anything that you made notes on that you really think people need to carry forward that I didn't touch on in my questions?
Not really, Grace. You did a great job of trying to summarize and anticipate where this market might be going. It looks really good for the cow-calf guys. We're patient bunch. It took us 60 years to get to record prices, but we're here, and of course, put some of the money back into your resource. I have some creek crossings that I've repaired. I have just different things that have needed a little more attention. And now that I have a little bit more cash flow, that's where I'm trying to put it back into my grazing resource. So that when times are not quite as good, it's my grazing resource is even stronger.
That's really good. So putting it back into your resource, because that's sort of like your bank account for when the times are tough. Yeah. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Ebel.
You're welcome. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Good luck. Stay with it.